Welcome to my podcast. In Afrikaans, I call it Met wie praat ek op Sondagaand. About 2 years ago, I decided to start a podcast where I can meet with my Facebook friends and have in-depth conversations with them. I used to call my mom on a Sunday evening, and after she passed, I had nobody to talk to on Sunday evenings, and that is how my podcast started. This is actually my very first English episode, and having lived in the Netherlands for quite some time now, I would like to apologize for my poor English. Today I speak with Ruth Prinsloo. Ruth is one amazing Facebook personality who writes wonderful and entertaining stories about her life in the Netherlands. But Ruth is also a medical miracle. And that is what we'll be talking about in the first part of the podcast. In the second part, we will talk about her fascinating job as an apprentice to a well-known Dutch sculptor. Don't miss out on the second half. You'll find it on my Patreon page, the Sulet Skeres podcast. I hope that Ruth's story will inspire all of us to live a life without fear in 2025. I want to start with Facebook because that's where I've come to know you and appreciate you. Because you're quite active on Facebook and you're one of the people who really go into the depths of things. You don't just post little pictures. Why do you do that?
Because I think there's enough in the world that is trite, and there is too much that is thoughtless, and too much that is unexamined. And I don't want to waste my time on things like that. And I assume that there are many people who feel the same. I don't just assume there are many, I know there are many. And the writing became for me, it was something that I always wanted to do it, but I never could get it out. It felt like it was stuck, and there was literally a cork in my vocabulary bottle, and I couldn't get it out. And when I was younger and I tried to tell stories, they were just dreadful. I mean, it would be something like there was a squirrel and his name was James and he fell out of a tree. The end. That's about as far as I got. And then when all the illness drama happened in my life, that was about 10 years ago, it was an absolutely dreadful time. And the operation that I had and the recovery took years. I'm actually still in recovery, let's put it that way. But the effect that it had was to uncork that bottle. And that's actually why I write now, is because it's a dream come true. I'm finally able to. But that's what it took. That's what it took to get it out. Yeah. So I'm just doing what I have always wanted to, and finally I can. And it's not like the bottle is open and it just comes gushing out day after day after day. What happens is I will get an idea, or I will see something and it'll just sit there, and then I'll remember something else and see the connection, or I'll see something else the next day or the next month and see a connection there. And slowly those little ideas start to weave themselves into a whole. And I keep them short. They're like essays. They're not full-blown novels by any means, and I don't think I would ever be able to sit down and write something that extensive. But because these are little units of perfection in themselves that I can work with, and that's what my physical disability allows me. That it allows me that space, that time, that concentration. And so that's the method that I've chosen is short stories now. I call it that. It sounds terribly authorish, but I have actually never published anything.
They're brilliant.
except for what everybody reads on Facebook. And so it's been nice, and it's been really good to hear what people feel and their reactions to what I write, because they are sometimes quite intense. And people have contacted me from all over the world, just saying, or I was really touched by this, or I read this to my husband and he couldn't stop laughing, and that's lovely. That's lovely to see on that small micro level that it really does mean something to others as well.
Something that I really appreciate is the fact that you have this uncanny ability to write about ordinary Dutch people. And you really have your finger on the pulse. It's lovely. And you're never mean. There's always a bit of appreciation. Why do you do that? Because, I mean, one can be very mean if one wants to.
Because meanness is wrong. And there's absolutely no point to being mean. And it is just something that it doesn't even enter my head. This country has become my home, absolutely. And from in the beginning, I had a really, really hard time settling here. It took me about 8 years to feel that I'd found some kind of balance. And in the beginning, I would go to the grocery store every day, and basically every day I would come home in tears, because of the way that people are. And I found what they call in Dutch brutaal. Yep. I found their way of speaking and their way of doing and their way of interacting. I found it so hard to deal with. I think that to a very great extent, this was not only because I'm a South African, we consider ourselves outspoken and forthright. But before we came here, my husband and I had been in Japan for 3 years. And Japan is on the opposite end of the cultural spectrum to Holland. So it literally was like as far east as you can get to as far on the other side. And the way that the Japanese people deal with each other is diametrically opposed to the way Dutch people do. And I think that was the problem. The Japanese culture is completely concentrated on the comfort of the other person. Whereas in Holland, you sink or swim. And if you're in the canal drowning in Japan, they will come with the whole village to pull you out. And I felt like in the same scenario in Holland, if you were drowning in the canal, there would be people standing on the side going, do it that way. No. That's how I experienced it, I think. And it took a very, very long time to get past that and to understand what the value is of the way they are and the way they interact. And now that I've grown into it, because we've been here for 23 years, 22 years now, I appreciate it for what it is. And it's actually wonderful. It's actually wonderful not to have to read between the lines and interpret and guess and try to figure out. You don't have to try to figure out anything because they've already told you.
They tell you.
Yeah. And that for me is actually lovely. It really is. And I think that's why it doesn't even occur to me to be mean, because they are not. They are just themselves.
Yeah.
And there's absolutely no call for that kind of response, I think.
But you
Yeah.
are very funny. I mean, you do write really, I mean, I sometimes kill myself when I read it.
Yeah. I'm not sure how it is that I see these things. It's also, it's got everything to do with who one is and where one comes from. I come from South Africa. South African parents. I grew up there. I went to university there. My whole way of looking at the world is that. That's what colors it right from the beginning. And I call it in another context, I would call it the landscape of childhood. What you are accustomed to right from the beginning is always the thing that you carry with you. And the type of humor that South Africans have is, in a way, also, it's very unique. It's very different to, say, Japanese humor or French humor or Dutch humor. The things I sometimes find funny here, still, Dutch people don't find funny at all. They can't understand why I'm laughing at it. But that doesn't matter to me at all. And I just laugh and I just carry on laughing. And they never take offense, because they see, oh, their forthrightness lets me also be myself. And that's the joy of it. You don't have to always understand. You don't always have to have doorgrond something right down to the bottom to be able to appreciate it. I think that's what's lovely. Is the possibility and the ability to be who I am and to allow other people to be who they are. I was never able to do this as a child. There are often times where you are praying or hoping for a situation to change, and it just doesn't, and or praying for a person to be different, and they just don't, year after year after year. The miracle of this whole process is that I was able to fix my own view, and I don't wait for people anymore. I just let them. They are who they are, and that's fine. And if I don't like what they're doing, I simply step out of the way. But I have lost that angry desire to have people do things the way I want them to. That's completely gone from my life. And that also, it's a result of that operation. I tell you, you go into surgery and you don't know what they're going to take away from you, but sometimes it's quite surprising.
Let's go to where you're living, because we're more or less neighbors. And Den Bosch is one of my most favorite cities in the entire universe. So tell a bit more about your home and where you live.
We came here in 2009, and I'd actually been to Den Bosch as a tourist. We lived in Rotterdam when we first came to Holland. We lived in Rotterdam for 18 months. And then we moved to Wiegen, which is just south of Nijmegen, because that's where my husband's office was. So we lived there for 6 years. And then during that time, we rented an old farmhouse. That's where we lived. But the farmhouse started to leak. And the owner just refused to do anything about it. And then at a certain point, the leaks were so bad that I actually had a 60-liter bucket catching water as it came. It literally was like a tap was turned on up there, and the bucket would be full by the end of the night. And when we left there for Den Bosch, it felt to me like I was leaving hell for greener pastures. So I came here already with a feeling of, oh, thank God. But I had been here before, And the thing that I noticed about Den Bosch already in the beginning is that people are different. They make small talk. They are friendly. They laugh. They are kind. They are gezellig, is the way that the Dutch put it. But I never realized until we came here just how great that difference is. And in Rotterdam's a very hard city.
Yeah.
One of my first experiences in Rotterdam actually illustrates this very well. I had some kind of stomach ache. I went to the doctor, and he said, "Oh, it's either this or it's that, and if it's that, we'll probably have to operate. Go to the doctor, or go to the chemist and get these painkillers, and call me in a week if it's still there." And that kind of bedside manner is pretty much a slap. And I didn't have a car, I was walking. So I had just heard this, we might have to operate. I don't even know what it is, but we might have to operate. And I'm going to the chemist for pain medication. I got it, and I was walking back to my house when all of a sudden I thought I was going to pass out. So I sat down on the sidewalk to let the dizziness go away, let it pass. And I sat there for about half an hour. And it was a busy sidewalk. And I didn't look like a homeless person. I didn't look like I was down and out. I was dressed completely properly and decently, and I was clean. I was not somebody off the street. And yet not one person stopped to ask, "Are you okay?" in half an hour. Not one. And that in Den Bosch is diametrically the opposite. I have found that even if I don't want people's attention, they are absolutely on it. It's just different. A while ago, I was photographing in the woods in one afternoon, and I was lying down on the ground because I photograph mushrooms, and some of them are very small, and you have to get really close up. And they were so small that I had to keep so still. I had to hold my breath so that the photo wouldn't blur.
Oh, yeah.
And I heard these two women coming along, and I heard them saying, "What is it? What's she doing there? What's she doing? Is she okay? Is she okay?" And they came up, and here I'm trying to hold my breath to get this photo. Just go away, please, because I've almost got it right. But that's the difference. That's the difference. So Den Bosch in itself, apart from the fact that it's just beautiful, and I feel much more at home here than I have anywhere else. And now it is home. I don't want to live anywhere else. So it's a city which has got it's got such a charm. It's got such a it's such a lovely thing to see unfold in front of me whenever I go in to town again, whether it be the dragon in front of the station or the market square and the St-Jan. I absolutely love the St-Jan. I used to go to mass there every single day for a number of years, so I know the layout of the cathedral really well. I've been up on the roof 3 times. And up the tower, and I know quite a number of the people who work there. So it's beauty. It's beauty, and it is history so combined that it is compelling for me. And that's what I love about Den Bosch. That, yeah, and the fact that its people are friendly.
Yeah, they've got very friendly people. On the one side of Den Bosch, there's this huge ziekenhuis, Hertogenbosch ziekenhuis. Do you mind telling us about your whole experience with that ziekenhuis?
My experience with that hospital has been fantastic. I have been there for, I've spent probably all told over the last years, a total of about 6 months in that hospital. And the reason was after my second child was born, that was when was he born? 2006. in about 2008, I started to have intermittent, like once every 6 or 8 months, a really bad stomach ache. And it would come and it would go. So they didn't do any further tests until it started to come regularly. And eventually, after tests, MRI scans and CAT scans and echoes and everything, they discovered that I had in my pancreas, in the duct of the pancreas. Pancreas duct looks like a Y, and at that point where the stalk of the Y joins the other two, there was a little tumor in there, and it had grown to such an extent that it was, it had distended the organ, and that was what was causing all this pain. So I basically had pancreatitis chronically, and it is extremely painful, really, really, really painful. It's not as painful as giving birth, but it's up there with that sort of experience. And they sent me then to the Radboud in Nijmegen, because at that point, this was in 2012, it was diagnosed. They sent me to the Radboud because at that point, only 2 hospitals in Holland, that's the Academisch Ziekenhuis, Radboud, and UMC in Amsterdam, AMC in Amsterdam. Those are the only 2 hospitals which could deal with this. The tumor was called an IPMN, intrapancreatitis, oh God. It'll come to me in a second, IPMN. And 15 years before that, nobody had known that such a thing existed. But they had a name for it now when I was there. And the doctor in the Radboud explained to me what he was going to do to solve this. He said, you would have to come into hospital. We would make a 40 centimeter long cut, and we will remove your whole pancreas if it's that damaged, or we'll leave a bit so that you can still produce some of your own insulin. And you'll just have diabetes afterwards. The pain will be gone. You'll just have diabetes. And I thought it was like something just popped in my brain. And I thought, this operation is going to kill me. There's no way I will survive this. He said he was going to put he was going to make that 40 centimeter cut, and I would be in hospital for a month, and I would be fed through a tube in my nose for a month, and I would stay in the Radboud, which meant that I would be far away from everyone here at home in Den Bosch. And then he looked at me over his spectacles and he said, gaat u hiermee akkoord? Do you agree? I said, no, I don't. And I got up and I left. And I walked around with that tumor for another 2 years. I was admitted possibly a total of about 8 times to the Hertogenbosch hospital here in Den Bosch, picked up by ambulance in the middle of the night, spending every time a week to 10 days to 2 weeks in hospital, morphine up to here. I have had so much morphine in my life that that's another story. Morphine's another story. But at a certain point, in September of 2014, my gastroenterologist came and said, Ruth, you cannot carry on like this. You have got to have this thing taken out. And I said, I am terrified that the operation is going to kill me. She said, I know. But we have a new surgeon here in the Hertogenbosch. He has just arrived. He's Dutch. He's specialized in laparoscopic surgery, and he's a specialist in particularly pancreatic operations. I'm going to send him to come and talk to you. So I said, okay. And about half an hour later, this tall, redhead, young doctor with sparkly blue eyes came into my hospital room, and he said, I hear there's a problem. What is it? I said, I have to have this operation and I'm terrified that it would kill me. He said, nonsense, you won't die. And then I said, and the doctor in Nijmegen said that he would cut a 40 centimeter long, nonsense, he says, I'll make a little hole 5 centimeters and a couple of other smaller ones, no more. It'll heal much quicker. And then I said, I have to be fed through a tube in my nose for a month. He said, rubbish, I'll have it out in 3 days. And that was literally how he spoke. And he was so enthusiastic. He was so enthusiastic. He was so sparkly-eyed. It was like a kid in a sweet shop. And he just could not wait to get started. And it took me all of 2 minutes to decide this man can do it. I trust him. So I said yes. And I was scheduled for surgery 2 weeks later. And the day that my life changed completely then was that day, the 6th of October, 2014. And I went in and they performed what they call a Whipple surgery.
Okay.
Whipple surgery is done for various reasons, and in my case, it was this tumor in the pancreas. So they went in with a three-point scenario. Either they would remove the whole thing, or they would remove the bit that was diseased and try to save the rest, or they would take the last bit, because the pancreas is a sort of a loose floating organ. It's connected on one side to the rest of the digestive system. So if they take the tail, if the tail was still all right, then they would have to sort of graft it on so that would become my new one. Those were the 3 possibilities, and I had to consent to allowing them to do whatever was best once they had seen. It wasn't something we could decide beforehand. And so I went to that operating room, and I was not scared. It was the most bizarre feeling. I knew I was leaving my life behind, but I had absolutely no fear. I'd had the priest from our parish church come in to give me the sacrament of the sick the day before. So in my mind and in my heart, I was okay for whatever would follow. And he operated for 9 hours.
Sure.
And when I woke up, I was in ICU. And that's when it was utter hell. But the hospital was fantastic. There was not one complication, not one thing went wrong. There was no setback at all. And for that, I am so unbelievably grateful. That's why I say that my experience at this hospital has been only good. They put me through absolute hell, but they did it so professionally, and they did it so well, and the staff was so kind, that I think that it was meant to be this way. I think that I was meant to be here. That's why I held out for those 2 years. And now, last October, I have just passed the 10-year mark of life without a pancreas. So it's what they call pancreagenic diabetes that I have. It's diabetes without the pancreas. And in shorthand, it's called type 3. It's treated as type 1 because you have to administer your own insulin. My body doesn't make any more. And I have to take insulin every day, 2 kinds. I have to take a pancreatic enzyme, which breaks down fat, and various other medications. But as long as all of those things are lined up, and here's a little insulin bag right here, it goes everywhere I do. And I can never leave the house without something to eat. I have to always have that with me. And I've just passed the 10-year mark. A while ago, let me think, when was this? About 3 years ago, some of the internal scar tissue tore in various places. And so they had to do a hernia repair. They put in a kind of a mat that, strengthens the whole area. And so I had to go in for that surgery as well. That was also very interesting, because that was at 8 years after the pancreatic surgery. And I was lying there in the hospital waiting to go in for this, also not scared at all. It's like all fear has just gone. I'm not afraid of anything. And I was lying there, fat smile on my face, and the surgical assistant came out and he shook my hand and he said, I just wanted to introduce myself. I specifically asked to assist at your operation. And I said, oh, why? He said, because u bent een heel interessant geval voor ons. You're a very interesting case for us. And I said, why? He said, because you are the first Whipple patient that we see back here in the hospital. I said, oh, okay, well, have fun. And in we went. And I didn't think any more of it. And then the operation went fine and recovery. And 6 weeks later, I hobbled into the surgeon's consulting room for the checkup. And then he said it again. He said, u bent een heel interessant geval voor ons. And I thought, now I want to know why. I said, why? He said, because you are the first Whipple patient that we see back here in the hospital. And I still in my I don't, yeah, I said, why? Didn't the others get hernias? He said, no, the others are dead. And that piece of knowledge hit me like an absolute slap in the face. I said, what? Yes, he said, the expected lifespan after Whipple is around 5 years. And you are at 8 already. So you can go home and think about it and give yourself a pat on the back. Gaat zo door, he said. And it literally hit me so that I didn't know whether I was coming. I didn't know what to do with that piece of information. And I went home and I called a friend of mine and I said, this is what the doctor told me. And he said, Ruth, what he has actually given you is out of the mouth of a medical man. You have proof of a miracle. Yeah, that's what it is. He's telling you that you have defied all the statistics and that most people don't. And as soon as I heard that, it fell into place. The whole experience just fell into place. And I realized then that as long as I am meant to be on this earth, I will defy every statistic there is. I will outlive every expectation while I am meant to be here. And that when the time comes to go, it's exactly the opposite. Nothing will stop it. And in that knowledge of I am here because I am meant to be, there is such unbelievable peace in that knowledge that I am able to go through every single day with all its ups and downs with this diabetes. I mean, diabetes is not a joke. I've passed out many times in supermarkets and woken up in hospital because of low sugar. You know, once happened in the Aldi, and they thought my heart had stopped, so they tried to resuscitate. And when I finally woke up in hospital, the guy said, "You have 2 broken ribs as well."
Oh, gosh.
So I have to go back to the Aldi, and I'm going to demand a year of free groceries for this.
Absolutely.
So diabetes is not it's not a laughing matter. It's not a joke. But the fact is that this is the cross. Pick it up, carry it with a smile on your face, and that's all there is. That's all there is to the story. Just do it. And I found that within that lies sanity, and within that lies hope, and within that also, strange as it may seem, lies joy, because it's in the acceptance of how things are that you can move forward and make the best of it. If you are constantly fighting against something, against how something is, constantly wishing for something to be different, you will never be able to shoulder it and get up and walk. And that, as far as I am concerned, is the greatest gift that this whole history has given me, is that. That's the gift that it's given me.
And out of that, you have also decided, or your creativity is sort of popped out,
Yeah.
and you are writing, but that's not all you're doing. You're
No.
also working on some beautiful things. But I would like us to go to the next link to talk about that.